Thank you, Stephen Olson, for being on the Lotus Guide YouTube channel.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's good to talk to anybody that's giving an interest in bringing conscious kinds of media outlets to people. Because personally, I think that there's probably nothing more important right now than bringing good media content to people. Especially when you see most of the stuff that's on TV and radio and internet,
Absolutely. We're trying to do on national television, I think, something that has perhaps been touched on only by Campbell and Moyers, and we're trying to do it with a much smaller budget, with a global focus. And so it's getting out there. It's getting out there through the series aired on Link TV before airing now on public television. It's streaming on the internet. We're trying to go for as much visibility as we can, and most of my life is spent writing proposals and trying to raise money to keep this series going, this
Right.
juggernaut going, and bringing more and diverse teachers to the series that really can benefit people's lives.
Yeah, what's your latest project, the One Through Love project? What's that about?
One Through Love is a project we're doing on Jalaluddin Rumi, the Persian poet,
Right.
and it's really what we call it a gathering of lovers. It's pulling together Rumi scholars, Sufi practitioners, different orders from around the world, Turkish, Iranian, Afghan, Western, and we're kind of looking at the core teaching of Rumi, which is love as the connecting force of all creation, and really I think helping at least people who are not familiar with mystical Islam to get some new insight that love as a spiritual practice is not just the domain of Christianity. While Jesus was a lover, there have been other great lovers in the world, and Rumi's certainly one of them, and his poetry is inspiring so many people in the West now. So we've decided to kind of take it into a website environment with live webcasts. That's called onethroughlove.org. One Through Love, THROUGH. We have a multilingual host, Parisa, who's putting it out there in Turkish, Farsi, Arabic, and English. So
This is Parisa Sultani.
Parisa Sultani, yes.
Yeah, I bet this isn't the field that Rumi was talking about beyond the wrongdoing and right doing, but it looks like we're meeting there anyway.
We are.
Yeah,
and there's a particular segment on the website that I want to recommend as far as technology and media. Sufi teacher named Llewellyn Van Lee talks about the internet as a tool of consciousness, and it's sort of emblematic of what we're trying to do, really use the oneness that is the internet to convey teachings of this kind that really bring people together and hopefully, move beyond mere tolerance to acceptance and love of the other, which is, of course, that if Jesus said anything in his life, it was that.
Right.
Anyway, that's what One Through Love is about.
It's really important too that the importance I see in people like you is like with Gurdjieff. I've read Gurdjieff for years and years and years, and he was totally into esoteric Sufism, and a lot of the body of his teachings came from that. But he was a terrible writer, and he depended on a person named Ouspensky, and Ouspensky is the one that really brought his teaching to light in a comprehensible way. Gurdjieff was one of those kinds of people. He could teach in person, but as far as getting it down in writing and bringing it to the media, he was terrible. So it's important to have people behind the scenes that can get this teaching and put it out there in such a way that it's comprehensible, because the people that we're really trying to reach aren't really there yet. And
Yeah.
they have a hard time understanding the esoteric language because it takes a level of consciousness, for the most part, to really grok that in a Heinleinian sense.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And there are historical precedents for this. I just got back from Afghanistan. With Afghan poetry, it's often two different people. There's the poet, and then there's the person who recites the poetry.
Right.
And these are seen to be two totally different skill sets. He or she who is the poet is not considered necessarily at all to be the best person to read that poetry.
Right.
And here we are in the West thinking, we need to do everything. I mean, Global Spirit is a hosted television show. Phil Cousineau, my partner in this, is a great writer and a great interviewer. He's not a television producer, and so in a way we're doing something that's bigger than the sum of all of our parts. I'm doing my part by trying to keep production values high and try to make this an engaging conversation, visually, cinematically, emotionally, and so on. And Phil's doing what he does best, which is making people feel comfortable, being broad as well as deep. So I think something is really working, and I have faith that the series is going to be growing and finding larger and wider audiences.
Yeah, you're finding that balance. There's a saying that comes out of the Middle East: "Believe in Allah, but tie up your camel first." And
Yeah.
there are some nuts and bolts to this, because again, Gurdjieff. One of the things that Gurdjieff said is, no matter how spiritual you are, the rent comes once a month, and if we don't have people watching out for that level, it'll fall apart. I've seen really good intentions, people with the best of intentions, but they didn't have the marketing or the corporate kind of structure in place, and it falls apart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know myself, my wife and I, we do the magazine, and when we started this, we started it out as a passion because she does healing and meditations, and we just knew that there was a place for this kind of media in Northern California, but we didn't have a clue of QuickBooks and accounting, and so we really had to try to balance that out, and it's really, really important to do that too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of things going on right now, Stephen. To get off the subject a little bit,
Yeah.
I was reading where at the collider, the super collider, they think they found the Higgs boson particle, and I was reading, because that's also called the God particle, which some scientists really hate. But if that is true, they have found the field. Again, we're in the field, and it's the field that they used to believe in, the ether field. You know what I mean? And what they're saying right now is something that I've touched on in the past. I sort of think that if we figure out gravity, and the Higgs boson particle is part of that, we're going to find out that gravity, if it has an emotional counterpart, would be love, because we feel attracted to each other. Love makes the world go around. I think we're getting close to figuring out the deeper, essential emotional elements of what really holds this world together. And poets like Rumi have touched on it all through the ages. But now we're starting, science itself, as we increase our awareness and our consciousness, science is opening up to these deeper truths.
Oh yeah, yeah. In fact, I mean, a lot of scientists are more comfortable with the term affinity, than love.
Right.
And as these theories are tested, they're convinced more than ever that it is this affinity factor that we call love. I mean, this opens up a whole other line of discourse, really, about what we mean by the word love in English and how it came to be understood as that. Because in Rumi's poetry and teachings, what they call ishq, or what in Turkish is called aşk, is a kind of divine love, a love of creation, a love of God and humanity and all of life. And as you know, Sufis get very some Sufi groups get very passionate about that. And how that came to the West through these traveling Central Asian troubadours and minstrels who have so much affected the European minstrels in this discourse, it became really kind of limited in its focus on romantic love. It includes romantic love, but in the Sufi sense, it's a much more all-encompassing love. And that force is easier to understand, by scientists as affinity or whatever kind of secular words they need to use to grapple with this. The relatedness and affinity of the universe, planetary attractions, all kinds of things. But anyway, it is really interesting stuff, and we hope to do a program more on the cosmos. And we've done a couple of programs on consciousness, exploring consciousness, East and West. That's a very important program in this regard. We've had Deepak Chopra on with Rianne Eisler, talking in depth about consciousness and as the unifying force of the universe. So it's a theme that keeps coming back into the natural discussion that takes place on these shows, because it is a program and a series that provokes questions, more so than giving answers. We're less interested in providing answers than asking those questions that take people's path further, or that give some articulation to a thought or a feeling that one's had. That to hear Bob Thurman say it, or to hear Karen Armstrong say it, it just rings some bells with people and lets them, or reminds them, that they're part of a global community.
Yeah, I like the kind of information that when you're listening to it, it's engaging and it moves something. And at the end of it, if somebody asks you, what did they say? You don't even know exactly what they said, but it did something. It was a catalytic information in a sense. And I think what happens is that we're getting more and more information that's breaking down the boundaries of our personality, our ego definitions. And that's the beginning of breaking down national and religious definitions to where we can start seeing more, as I think it was Alan Watts that called this the leaky margins, the leaky margins of our personality. As those break down, we'll be able to be less confrontational, defensive, and likewise less offensive too. Yeah,
that's the hope. And we're also using film segments. I'm a filmmaker, and I do believe in the power of film to create a sense of an experience. And I'm hoping that our programs, in that they contain 2 or 3 film segments, actually take people on a little trip, a little experience of the topic of the program or the theme of the program, and that they get some direct sense of what forgiveness looks like or feels like, or what sacred music feels like, or the creative spirit,
Right.
So I do hope that's working. We're putting a lot of those out on the Huffington Post. I'm doing a weekly series to coincide with the broadcast, and we're taking special effort there to show not so much discussion segments from the program, but film segments.
Yeah, film media is really important. I have a friend, Gerard Ungerman. He's been making documentaries. He's going across country right now doing a documentary about respect, asking people what does respect mean to you? And all of these are ways to let people sort of stand in other people's footsteps, Like when he asked me what respect means for me, it's the basic meaning. But what came up though was a lot of times what we call respect for another person is actually fear. We tend to fear our kings and our queens and our presidents, and and we call that respect, but in a deeper sense, it's not. And true respect is something that we all want to get and we all want to give. And I think if we can just start from that basic foundation of just giving people respect and expecting it back, I think that would be a good start.
Yeah, absolutely. And how is respect created? One could ask, particularly when there are differences, cultural or religious differences. I think Global Spirit is informed by that yearning for understanding and respect for the other. How does that happen? I would say it happens through actually knowing someone who's of the other. If you've got any friend from Iran or any friends from Saudi Arabia or from Libya, a true friend, it's harder to generalize and say all Arabs or all Muslims or all Shia or all Sunni. All of a sudden it's taking on a very personal, distinct dimension, and that's what we're trying to do, is introduce guests who, if you haven't met a Tibetan Lama, yourself, or had one over for tea, meet this guy. Enter his world. Imagine why he's talking about human addictions the way he does, and how they are so directly connected to suffering,
right?
Addictions from our ego, etc. And step into his shoes, and I think whatever the shoes are, the hope is that one comes away enriched and, again, beyond tolerant, a kind of embrace that's extending outwards to humanity, really.
Right.
Yeah.
So when is your show going to be airing? Is it best to go to Huffington Post blog or
it's website? Best to go to our website, globalspirit.tv, and look up PBS broadcast schedule, and it shows every state, which localities in every state it's playing and what time it's playing. And then you just check on our program list, so you could actually plot out which program is playing on which date. I think it is playing in Chico, but it's airing all over the nation, and we're getting great comments from people all over the nation. So the main site is globalspirit.tv.
Okay, yeah, I'll be sure to get that information out there to our communities up here.
You can watch shorter video segments from each program there as well. So, and there's a 24-minute sampler that I encourage people to see, because it really gives a sense of the breadth of the series.
Yeah, I'll check that out. I went to your cemproductions.org. That's a nice website too.
Oh yeah, yeah.
We have a
lot of film material, and hopefully a lot of inspiring film material up there. We've had such great web people working with us, some of them donating lots of time to get this meaningful content out there for people, to people, for free.
Looks like you've been on a journey for a while, Stephen.
Yeah. Well, I think this is my own, I did a lot of traveling in India in my 20s, and Afghanistan and Middle East, and would come back and tell my neighborhood friends in San Francisco about the world, and they were so interested. And then I realized, God, if I had a camera, if I photographed any of these incredible people, I'd have something to show. And that, of course, led to film and filmmaking, and it's all been part of that search for me. And cameras sometimes open doors to people's lives. Back to respect. There's an awful lot of respect that goes on when you ask someone to let you in.
Right.
Particularly to go where we're trying to go, which is inside the inside. It's a very sacred place and requires a lot of trust. So,
well, in the words of Khalil Gibran, I think you've made your love, your work is your love made manifest. It looks like you're doing a good job at that, Stephen.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
Is there anything else you'd like to add to this?
Just to say, it's wonderful to be here. Thanks for your genuine interest in what we're doing. I think you're doing a great service by curating or passing on to your viewers and listeners things that you feel that are important out there, and I'm glad to be included as one of those series, one of those endeavors.
Thank you very much, Stephen. That means a lot. All right. Just saying thanks a lot, Stephen, and for everything you're doing, and it's really important in today's world. You know, I wrote a book called To Believe or Not to Believe, the social and neurological consequences of belief systems. And the idea is to get people to stop pretending like they know things. And because we have a whole world now that once you get a group polarized, it's hard to get them out of that corner, because they start filtering out anything that conflicts with previously held beliefs. So it's almost like we need to reformat society and just start from zero again. And it's a difficult thing to do, but I tell you, talking to neuroscientists like Andrew Newberg, people like that, that's really Sam Harris, they're looking into this, and they're really seeing that once you say you believe something, you know, you say, okay, I believe this. Well, if you don't know it for sure, it's really dangerous, because the moment you say you believe something, your mind stops thinking about it. And what you do neurologically is you start setting up filters, and once the filters go up, you start breaking neural synapses to information that conflicts with that belief, and you get identified with it. That's why you say, I am a Christian, I am a Republican. We become so identified, and at that point you start seeing a completely different world that really substantiates whatever your belief is. And it's a dangerous place to be in a world where our cultures are colliding. So I guess we're all just doing our little part to put information out there to open people's minds and their hearts. You know, it's a lot of what's going on right here, even with you and I. You know, it's like Rumi mentions, like language and ideas, all this stuff will disappear at some point. And I can feel there's a little bit of a heart connection here, you know, and this is what it's really about. I think this is the importance of media that's video, because it transfers over somehow in this amazing kind of a way.
You can feel it.
Yeah.
You know, they say in filmmaking and television sometimes there's three levels of communication. One is if you can't feel it, then at least show it. If you can't show it, then tell it. You know, so there's these hierarchies of. Anyway, grateful to be part of your show, and thanks for your kind words. Keep up the good work.
Yep. Yeah, and you enjoy your day there on your boat.
Please send me a link when you get it posted.
Absolutely, Stephen. I will.
All right, brother. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.